so good.
Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water with Joyce Aldrich. Refresh your mind.
Welcome to this edition of A Drink of Water. My name is Joyce Aldrich, and as always, we have interesting guests and great music. Tonight is no difference. We have Jonathan Chevreau in, who's a veteran financial columnist, blogger, and author who's based here in Toronto. He was the Financial Post personal finance columnist between 1993 and 2012, and he's going to help people find their financial independence, their findependence. But first we're going to listen to a song by Roger Ellis. His song is Going for the Gold. And while you listen to this, does this sound like you? Because if it does, Jonathan Chevreau is going to talk to you about how you can get yourself out of some of these big messes, these financial messes that people get themselves into, especially nowadays. So here we are with Roger Ellis's Going for the Gold, and you're listening to A Drink of Water.
One, two, three, four. Man comes on the TV, got more cash for gold. Broker says diversify, it's a good time to buy gold. Working double overtime, trying to get ahead. Bills are burying me alive, I might as well be dead. Going for the gold, running for the money. Killing myself, you think it was the end of the world. Going for the gold, running for the money. Going for the gold, running for the money. Family, fixing up my old guitar, gonna get back on the road. Turning off my TV, got no cash for gold. Diversified pie in the sky, it's a poor boy getting old. Going for the gold, running for the money. Myself, you think it was the end of the world. Going for the gold, running for the money. Going for the gold, running for the money. Singing in the subway, singing for the old folks in their homes, singing, playing guitar. On the TV, got more cash for gold. Broker says diversify, it's a good time to buy gold. Going for the gold, running for the money. Kill myself, you think it was the end of the world. Going for the gold, running for the money. For the gold, running for the money. Going for the gold, running for the money.
That's going for the gold. We find ourselves often going for the gold and working our fingers to the bone trying to do that. An entire lifetime of groveling in the dirt. I'm here with someone who's going to try and get us out of that pit that we dig ourselves into. And I have Jonathan Chevreau in studio this evening. Jonathan, welcome to A Drink of Water.
My pleasure, Joyce.
Jonathan, you are, I guess you're kind of like a financial guru. Certainly you have been involved with the Financial Post, the Money Sense magazine, and you are a person who has come up with some pretty interesting ways to get people out of where they're at financially, and we are in a big mess. And you've written a couple of wonderful books. Findependence Day, a combination of financial independence, that's Findependence. Also, you co-wrote Victory Lap Retirement with Mike Drack, and certainly these books, I'm looking through it and I thought, you kind of describe my life because I'm one of your guerrilla frugality people.
Frugers.
Frugers. I'm a fruger. And that's not, for anyone's listening in right now, that is not a bad word.
It's a good word.
It's a very good word. Tell us why it's a good word. Let's talk about get right into this.
Well, I mean, it's all about financial independence is really about living within your means. And we all know that debt is a terrible shock. Even at today's low interest rates, people are kind of lulled into a false sense of security, thinking, well, you know, my mortgage is only a few percent. How bad can it be? I grew up when interest rates were like 12%, and our priority was to pay off the mortgage as fast as possible.
Sure.
In fact, one of the catchphrases in Findependence Day is the foundation of Findependence is a paid-for home. You know, this is not what everybody necessarily agrees. Some people think you should, remortgage the house and leverage your securities and kind of go on to the stock market.
What about people who don't want to purchase a home but want to do other things?
They're perfectly free to rent, and that's quite rational. Better to rent and live within your means than to overreach for a house you can't afford and just get into debt.
I think that's a really good point because in today's market, it's so hard to find a home and to purchase a home, be able to purchase a home, and rental. those are few and far between as well. But you're going to show people how they can do either or both, or
I mean. Well, first of all, Findependence Day came out in 2008, so
yes.
It was right during the sort of
that big year.
Big year.
The
timing, whereas Victory Lap just came out just in the fall. I mean, I still believe that I'd rather enter retirement, traditional retirement, with no debt whatsoever. And personally, I think it's a lot easier not to have to come up with mortgage payments or rent. The problem with renting, now I understand that Toronto and Vancouver are very expensive markets right now, and so maybe everything I say doesn't apply. But in principle, when you rent, you're still paying a mortgage. You're paying your landlord's mortgage, and what happens? You never stop paying rent, and as inflation goes up, the landlord is forced to continue to increase your payments. Personally, I like the idea of, number one, not having my payments go up. My rent payments going up every year with inflation. And
sure.
Two, I like the idea of eventually not having to pay any rent at all. That's what happens when you have a paid-for home.
Well, yeah, because rent can go up 2 to 3% in any given year, and that's perfectly within reason. And if that's with rent control and without rent control, now we know that people have been doubling and tripling an actual rent from $1,000 to $3,000. That's heinous, but it's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can find a rent-controlled apartment, yes, it might be a great deal. I mean, in fact, I have a 100-year-old friend. Her name is Mita, and I've written about her. And she has been paying $400 a month rent in a beautiful top floor of an apartment by the Lake Ontario since the 60s.
Wow.
And we joke that, they feel sorry for the landlords because in each case they figure, well, when every time the property changes hands, they say, well, one thing, Mita's she's going to be there, but, she's 83. She probably won't last much longer. And then the next landlord comes in for 3 years, and it's Mita, 86. Yeah, it's just a couple more years. She's 100. She's having the last laugh. But how many people are in that situation?
Exactly. So what can people do?
Well, you have to, again, guerrilla frugality, you opened up with that whole notion.
That's right.
Which means you want to be a frugality guerrilla. It means ultra frugality. Personally, I think, and the problem with the millennials right now is they have so much more temptations to spend than the baby boomers did when we were their age starting out. But we didn't have to worry about cell phones and iPhones and internet service and Netflix and all the rest, all these expenses, because we're only talking about, a 10% margin. If you spend everything you make, then you're not going to get ahead. So if you want to save 10 or even better 20% of your of what you earn, you've got to cut those expenses to the bone. But the problem with all these toys and temptations, people talk about $6 asparagus toast and things like that.
Well, these are these toys, these things that people have, all the technology. That's now people's entertainment.
It is, but
it's an expensive form of entertainment, especially when you add on apps and all this kind of all the doodads,
So the temptation is not only just to spend everything you make, but of course, by definition, if you spend more than you make, then you're going into debt, and then that you definitely don't want. That's a bad scene. So in order to save 10% rather than go into debt by 5% every year, that's a 15% swing.
Wow.
Obviously, you have to be frugal. You got to go without. You got to brown bag it. You got to keep the used car going a little longer, or just use public transit. You've got to use every trick in the book because. You have the marketing people. We're up against this big, huge, consumption-oriented advertising machine that is based on capitalism, based on getting us to spend, whether you need something or not. So I just say, question every purchase. Does it really meet your long-term goals? If you're one of the things I often write in one edition of the book, I said, freedom, not stuff. Like, you should be tattooed on your head.
Yeah.
So every time you make a purchase, you say, do I want this stuff, this new pair of Imelda Marco's shoes that'll be broken in 3 months, or do I really want freedom? If I want freedom, I'll say, no, I think my old shoes would do fine just for another few months.
Take them to the shoemaker. People don't do that much anymore. I don't think so.
I have a great little shoemaker. In fact, the pants I'm wearing today, I just had the hems redone, so I get another year out of these jeans. So
fantastic. But how do you get through? We'll probably talk a little bit more about this after the break, because we've got about 3 minutes left to break. But how do you get through to the psychology? It's really, people have got to be ready. It's like ready to lose weight, ready to stop smoking, any kind of an addiction. Would you call this an addiction that people have to all this stuff? How do you get through to them? Like, what thin edge of the wedge do you push in,
Well, there is an addiction. I mean, it's called, conspicuous consumption.
Yeah.
I said what the cure is, but to actually execute it, I think in ways...
get people motivated to do it. Like, how do you do that?
Well, partly it's a couple thing, too. So remember that the subtitle of Independence Day is One Couple's Turbulent Journey to Financial Independence. Yes. And because they're basically so if you're talking about couples, there are 4 spending types. You have savers, spenders, builders, and givers. The problem happens if you have a couple, both members of whom are both spenders. That's disaster. And if you have 2 savers, then you have 2 people that probably, like my wife and I, maybe by Friday night we'll splurge on a pizza and watch a movie on Netflix, and that's the extent of our high living. Right. Whereas the people who are in trouble are dual spenders who think nothing of going to a fancy restaurant 4 nights a week. Well, that really adds up.
Sure it does. Wow. Well, John, you've given a lot of... in the first segment, we've got a lot to think about. So we're going to have to sort of unpack this as we go on through the program. And we're going to be playing a few songs to sort of inspire or trigger. I don't know. I think I'm going to play triggering songs so people go, that's me, or no, I don't want to be that way. Because really, it's not a good place to be. I mean, just before we go to break, I can say that, I was for me, debt was $8,000. But when you're, you don't have, everything is relative. And I went to credit counseling. I got rid of all my cards. And that's a really good way to do it. And I tell you, I don't buy anything unless I have the cash, the do-re-mi, and that helps an awful lot.
Yeah, debit cards are a lot safer. In fact, the opening to Independence Day starts with a scene about the woman going on a reality TV show, and she's afraid to cut up her credit card, and she's challenged by the host to do just that.
Oh, it is. And I've talked to people about credit counseling before. We're going to come back and talk more about that after this break. And we're here with John Chevreau, and he's talking about finding your Findependence Day. When will that be? Hopefully today. Okay, we'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
I could have been king, but I didn't take the clothes. The jeweled hat, the ermine robes. I could have been king, but I didn't like the hours. The wretched excess, the abuse of power. I could have been top of the heap, head of the class, first in line, but I didn't feel like kissing so much. Yes, I was saying I could have been king. I could have been king, but I would have had to laugh. Wash out my mouth from talking so much crap. I could have been king, but I would have died too young and have the people mourn their royal son. I'd have probably driven the limo into the pool, drugged myself, then drowned in my own drool. But I think I was saying I could have been king. At least that's how it looks from here. I could have been anything. I could have been king, but I guess I didn't try. And if they said sour grapes, it's possible they're right. I could have been king. I know I had the goods, the regal bearing, the witty words. I could have been king. The ball was in my court, but I wasted chances like it was royal sport. I could have been top of the heap, head of the class, first in line, but I didn't feel like kissing so much. Yes, I was saying I could have been king. At least that's how it looks from here. I could have been anything. I could have been king, but I guess I didn't try. And if they said sour grapes, it's possible they're right.
It's 9:21 here at CHHA 1610 AM. You've just tuned into A Drink of Water. If you're just is hearing us for the first time here on CHHA 1610 AM. And I'm here with Jonathan Chevreau, who is the author of a book called Findependence Day. It came out in 2008, which was a very bad year. And his more recent book, Victory Lap Retirement, co-write with Mike Drack, that came out in the fall of last year. And Jonathan Chevreau, here we heard about this guy, could have been king, and but he didn't take the chances, and he didn't like this and that. But, how can people, you talk about doing what you love to do, and that work should be play, and it should be an enjoyable thing, and, not have to have that mortgage and that rent, and to be financially independent. Like, that sounds beautiful, like a utopia, but how do you do that?
Well, as the subtitle to Victory Lap Retirement says, it's basically work while you play, play while you work. So if you can, in one of the chapters in the book talks about building a life from which you don't have to retire. So I think that a lot of people, you see all the advertising. Retirement is something sold by the financial companies and the big media. And it's almost as if they've decided that work is such a horrible thing that you've got to have it stop so that you can go on to your real life. But in fact, work is an integral part of our experience in life. And if we didn't have work to go, we'd all be, we're all going to be in our houses all alone, isolated, not interacting with people. Society is nothing but a bunch of people having needs and other people meeting them. That's what capitalism is. So if you don't like your job, you shouldn't retire. You should find a way to make a living that's more congenial. And the best way to do that, I say, is independence or financial independence. The other part of the subtitle is the joy of financial independence at any age. It doesn't mean that you're going to slave and save for 40 years, and then at 65, you get to stop working, and all of a sudden life's going to be wonderful. No, that's not the way it works. Some people think independence is so important that they save half of their paychecks throughout their 20s, and by the time they're 35, they've reached their Independence Day, and then they can do what they want. But they don't stop working. 35 is way too early to stop working. What they are is they're self-employed. They go on to encore careers. They have a passion, usually it's often in the arts. Why is it? Have you ever asked yourself why? I know we're going to talk about the Beatles later.
Yes, we will.
Paul McCartney just turned 75. I believe he's still performing. Why is Mick Jagger still performing? I'm pretty sure he's rich enough that he doesn't have to do it.
I know they say about the Stones, It's great, though.
The point is, he found his bliss when he was in his 20s, and it's not work to him. And the irony is, when you don't think it's work, you get paid way more than, working for somebody else for minimum wage. So there's a lot of ironies here.
We can't have a whole community or society of artists. I understand, all of that. Like, what if a person is a lawyer or an accountant or works in retail, or how does that fit in today's society? Like, a lot of jobs have to be done, right, to make the world go round. So I'm just trying to figure it all out myself.
We can't all be rock stars. We can't all be novelists. I hear what you're saying, but I think a lot of us have talents that are probably repressed. I think the typical life pattern is, let's say you decided you wanted to be, I don't know, Joyce, a ballerina when you were 8.
I did, and I was in, but my ballet teacher said it was like talking to a wall, and I did my own little flicks and my own little things, and I didn't fit into the ballet class. They threw me out. I'm not kidding you. It's a true story.
And I didn't even know that, so I just threw it out as a possibility.
I'm going to cry.
But in other people, some people just, they think they want to be a painter, or they tried to, play, bass guitar when they were 14, and then what happens is you grow up and you get married and you have children, you have a mortgage, a house, and you sort of make a lot of compromises. You put your dreams on hold. And you kind of do the 9-to-5 thing, 48 weeks a year, and you start believing that the 3 weeks off they give you for paid holiday is your real life, and the rest of it is like selling something you don't really want to sell, or being a lawyer, doing something like that. I don't think that's real life. And ultimately, I think people come back to, and the whole point of Victory Lap Retirement is to find that bliss. It may means going back to like a visualization exercise. What did I want to do when I was 14 or 17? In my case, I think I wanted to be a writer, a novelist, and so I wrote for Independence Day as a novel, sort of a way to kind of...
I love the way it's written. It's fabulous.
Yeah, well, it is actually a real novel.
It is a novel.
I must have read 100 books on how to do it and had written one before. I mean, novel writing is all about a series of conflict, about short goals, and then and basically to keep the reader reading, you have to have a goal and then basically a block, and they have to overcome it. So I won't go into all the mechanics. But
Well, people have got to get Findependence Day. And where can they buy it? They can purchase it at Findependence.
Findependenceday.com. Yeah. By the way, even though we said the Canadian edition we're talking about, the blue one, came out in 2008. There's a U.S. edition that came out just in 2013.
Oh, wonderful.
Which you can get at Trafford.com. So Victory Lap Retirement is available everywhere. You can get it at Chapters and at Costco and at airport bookstores and Kindle and Kobo and where it's a bestseller.
And that's Victory Lap Retirement.
Yeah, or go to victorylapretirement.com or .ca. And in the back of the book, there's actually sort of it gives you the places where you can go to findependenceday.com, which was available in Chapters the first year, but I basically bought back the inventory. So now you have to go to findependenceday.com to actually order it with PayPal. It's like $16.
Oh, I understand. Well, we're going to have to go to break again and come back with, basically we're going to continue to talk about how to invest your money, right? You have an investment, a way to invest money, maybe just give us a backstory, a little bit of backup before I go to break, so people can look forward to hearing about that.
We talk about the Findependence Day model, which is basically three things. It's buying exchange-traded funds or ETFs, indexing, using a discount brokerage, and using a financial planner, a fee-only financial planner. So that's what I call the Findependence Day model. Gets out of a lot of the conflicts and the high costs, etc., involved in investing. But we can go into that a little more depth.
We will, and that's at any age.
At any age, yes.
That's the most mind-boggling thing for me, because at any age, because when you get to my age, which is almost 62, and you just mentioned you just turned 64, like if somebody isn't there yet, you wonder, oh, it's too late for me. So it's not too late, and Jonathan Chevreau is going to talk to you about how you can find your Findependence, make your Findependence Day today. Okay, we'll be back right after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
If you're just tuning in, Jonathan Chevreau is here with us, and writer of Findependence Day and Victory Lap Retirement. Jonathan, before we start into this segment, I just wanted to read the dedication to Victory Lap Retirement, which I think is perfect. We just heard When I'm 64. And of course, we boomers have our millennial children now.
But no grandchildren in my case.
Oh, well.
Ironically for the song.
Well, yeah, they will come. To our fellow baby boomers, it's finally our turn again. And what are you waiting for? And to our kids, the millennials, use the lessons of Victory Lap as a leg up and learn to play the long game on your terms. Fabulous, because, we got kids out there who I think a lot of people have lost, the millennials have lost a bit of hope, because it's a different world from what we grew up in, but it's the same world if it's a Findependence thing. It's the same thing, right? So I could say I'm an idiot when it comes to finances. Really, it's better I don't have money than I don't spend it, and I don't make a mess of my life. But hey, we want to have a good life. So how do we do that?
Well, I think the baby boomers went through exactly the same experience as the millennials are now. In fact, my daughter just came back from Scotland from a year. And she's sort of at home. In fact, we were talking about the Anglican ministry the other day. The minister talked about his own empty nest having refilled. With his two sons had come in, and failure to launch, he called it. So
failure to launch.
And so but I recall being in the exact same situation myself in the early 70s, and kind of like you've got your college degree, and you sort of tried a job or two, not quite right, not quite launched, and it's quite natural to go back back to the womb of the parental home, where they're the only place in the world where they're not going to charge you for everything. and
Depends on the parent.
Yeah, well, that's true. And what a great opportunity to, if you get even a little job, and then basically start saving, get rid of the debts, which is if you can't get out of debt when you're living at home, when can you? And if you can get out of debt, then keep on using the frugal behavior that got you out of debt, and start putting it into a tax-free savings account, a TFSA. Ideally, it's $5,500 a year from age 18. The government lets you put it in.
Okay.
I think that ideally, if the parents can kind of do a matching program, say, look, kid, don't spend everything you make. If you can save $1, we're going to give you $1.
Yeah.
So you only have to put in $2,700, and then we'll put in $2,700, and then you'll be surprised how fast that TFSA will grow.
So boomers partner with millennials to make it happen. That's part of it.
Well, I think so.
No.
I think failure to launch means that the parents need to help the kid launch.
Sure.
Yes, there's two types of financial independence. So some people define independence as the young millennial who's finally left the parental home and is renting their own apartment. And that's not what I call independence. That's just called getting a job and paying the rent and trying to be independent from mom and dad and no longer going to BOMO, the bank of mom and dad.
Interesting.
But true financial independence is being not just independent of your parents, but independent of everything, not owing a dime to a bank,
to a student loan,
student loans, credit card companies, etc. You don't want debt of any kind. And it's well known. How do you do it? I mean, you again, we talked about frugal behavior.
Yes.
You got to live within your means. You got to have a surplus of 10 to 20%. Otherwise, if you just break even, that's a disaster, because if you have no margin for error, then the moment you lose a job, then you're going to be living on credit cards, and the next thing you're in this spiraling hole. And sometimes it isn't just the problem with credit cards; it's also a problem with Revenue Canada, because a lot of millennials don't have what I call real jobs, salaried employee jobs. They're independent contractors, and that's the only work they can get. And they better start accruing for taxes right off the get-go. Otherwise, you can get into great trouble very quickly.
Once you have to pay those taxes out, and that does add up quickly.
Yeah, especially with HST. If they don't accrue for that 13% right off the bat, you're behind the eight ball.
Yeah, so... So let's say I'm a 32-year-old person out there who's been doing the job and everything and trying to make my way and haven't really been back to mom and dad's and back out, I don't know, renting again, but I want to buy a condo, or I want to do, you said you talked about the frugality, which is important, and the investments. What else can they do?
Well,
what's the whole model?
The lifestyle is to live within your means, and then by living within your means, you then therefore have some capital. You can't do anything without savings. So savings is the difference between what you spend and what you earn. So if you've got the little, you in fact, we just heard the song.
Yeah.
We shall scrimp and save. That's
right.
So, and that was at 64, let alone in your 30s. So in your 30s, you do need to scrimp and save. You need to brown bag it. You got to resist going to Starbucks every day and having lattes. And
clubbing every night.
Exactly. I mean, maybe you can award yourself Friday nights off, but you better have a lot of... actually, I think Netflix is a great deal, actually. And go to the library instead of buying books and chapters.
Make popcorn at home.
Exactly.
And buy it by the bag and make it in the pot.
Yes. So you've got some money, but you've got to use that wisely too. You can't just put it in a GIC that pays 1.5% if you're lucky. You've got to go to the stock market, and you've got to have a diversified portfolio of tech stocks and every other kind of stock that pays dividends. I think that the best deal in the old days, people talked about mutual funds, which are just baskets of stocks. But it's pretty well acknowledged now that exchange-traded funds or ETFs is the way to go. The Findependence Day model is buy ETFs, which are, basically they're just think of them as cheap mutual funds, and which give you broad exposure instantly across all the markets. And then you want to go...
And they're slower, aren't they? And they accrue slower or are they quicker? I don't know anything about them. I don't
It
have one.
You get a financial advisor. I do believe you do need some.
I was going to say,
advice,
because you can't just you can decide to do this on your own. You've got to have someone who knows what they're doing.
which is part of this. So, in fact, if you go to the hub, Financial Independence Hub,
Right.
independence.hub.com, there's a section called Guidance there, and I have a whole list of financial planners who get the concept of independence.
Beautiful.
So basically, you say, I want to. You'll get a fee-only financial planner, and fee-only, not a commissioned salesperson, and you say, I want to actually do this myself. I go to a discount brokerage. Any of the big banks has discount brokers. RBC Direct, TD Waterhouse, they all have them.
Wow.
And you say, I want to buy ETFs, exchange traded funds, in a discount brokerage arm, but I still need help. But with that help, I was very specific. I want it to be a fee-only financial planner. That means they may charge a couple $100 a year, but they're not taking 1% of your wealth. Because
No.
let's face it, if you have $1 million and you're paying 1% of your wealth, that's $20,000 right off the bat.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd rather have $20,000 in my pocket than in somebody
And
else's.
200 versus 20,000 is a huge difference.
It is, and then the same with the ETFs. They're about 10 times cheaper than mutual funds. So if you go to mutual funds, and basically you end up in the hands of people who care more about their own retirement than yours. Now, mind you, we don't care about retirement here. We care about independence and having a life that you don't have to retire from.
Exactly.
So that's it in a nutshell. That's all you really need to know from this, of how to. That way you don't have to worry about what stocks to buy. You don't buy stocks. You buy ETFs, which buy all the stocks for you. Whether all these popular stocks we've read in recent weeks about Amazon buying Whole Foods. Well, if you have a properly diversified portfolio, you already own a little bit of Amazon. You already own a little Whole Foods.
So when they purchase, you also benefit.
Yeah, exactly. The S&P 500, for example, is probably 4% just in Apple. So
Okay.
you're automatically going to be, you say, oh, Apple's doing well, that's great. You're getting rich too. You're getting rich with Jeff Bezos at Amazon and with Tesla, all these people.
And I imagine you don't really have to invest a lot of money, just a little bit. What would be a minimum amount? Like, let's say someone who's on a fixed income, they're in their 60s and they're a senior, and they say, you know what, I want my Findependence Day.
Yeah, well, the good thing about having reached age 64 is the government will actually, I just wrote about this, I do a thing called, in money sense, called retired money every 3 weeks or so. When you're 64, actually, the Canadian government will say, we're going to give you OAS, Old Age Security, in the next year. You should apply 6 months or a year in advance. And, of course, you could apply for Canada Pension Plan even earlier.
At 60, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, as early as. So the whole concept of Victory Lab is multiple streams of income. That you have a little pension here and a pension over there, the government pensions here, you have your RSPs and your TFSA income, and you have non-registered. And then, but a big part of that could be part-time work. We talked about how if a couple who's age 65 works makes $1,000 a month or $2,000 between the couple, for 10 years, their nest egg is going to last way longer than it otherwise would. So if you have some pension income, some investment income, and a little work income, then that's the ideal thing. I mean, very few people, and we're going back to the millennials, very few of them are going to have these classic defined benefit pension plans that the politicians and the teachers and the civil servants all have.
Oh, yeah, those are disappearing.
They are. They're great. If you can have one, hang on to it. My father was a retired teacher. But in my experience, the baby boomers, they're kind of few and far between, and the millennials are going to be very rare. The millennials probably aren't going to stick at any one job that long enough to do it.
Well, they'll have at least 10 careers, I understand, at least within a lifetime.
Exactly, and that's
especially with the contract work, and we don't have, and all the benefits aren't there anymore because it's all contract, as you said before.
Right, so they're going to go in and out of the workforce. So what I'm saying is, what we're saying in Victory Lap Retirement, instead of having one big retirement at the end of your life, you have a series of mini retirements. So if you're a millennial,
interesting.
So you maybe you retire, quote unquote, when you're 32 because your contract is
expired,
up. Yeah. And but luckily you've been doing this TFSA, And so that's your emergency cushion. And then that funds the next year where you're retired, going back to school to retrain in something else. Then you come out, and then you're back into the work mode, and now you start building up, use all these principles, frugality, build up your TFSA, etc. And then 3 years from then, again, the contract comes down, and now you decide you want to go and start doing that in another country. So it's a series of mini retirements, all funded by the concept of independence and the TFSA.
And the world is getting smaller, and the way industry is, I think it's a wonderful idea, and how exciting to build your life that way.
You can do it anywhere. In fact, there's a bunch of books called, what is it called? The Laptop Millionaire, for example, and several other books where basically a millennial who's technology literate has a laptop computer, can go and do a lot of this stuff almost anywhere.
It's a virtual office.
And as you know, with wireless, and every time you go into a cafe or a restaurant, you can kind of just plug and play. So, I mean, not every profession is as portable. Certainly for writers and intellectual knowledge workers like ourselves, it can be very portable.
Well, yeah. Well, things are getting to be more and more so. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll have more from John Chevreau and more about Findependence and Victory Lap retirement. And you can retire several times during a lifetime. That's exciting. And you can work while you play and play while you work and have the joy of financial independence at any age. So we're going to come back and talk more about that after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Yes, you're listening to the final segment of A Drink of Water here on CHHA 1610 AM at 9:48. And we go out at 9:58. So Jonathan Chevreau is here in studio with me this evening talking about Victory Lap retirement, about Findependence, Findependence Day, and how you can enjoy your life. Why not? Go for it. Right, John?
Yes, and as we all know, like it or not, money fuels most things in life. So you've got to take it all pretty seriously, I think.
Well, yes, you're not. A lot of people say, "I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time." But a lot of money is blown on that, and it's what defines a good time.
Well, I remember. Do you remember John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever? I will paraphrase,
right?
Because John is, if you remember, he's partying his brains away and going to discos every night.
Right.
And the father says, "You've got to get serious, John. You've got to get serious." And he says, "Oh, Dad, F the future." And the father says, "No, son, the future F's you." Which is actually, apart from the rudeness of it all, is quite wise. And so I think life is something you've got to, if you don't take it seriously, and to me, life and money are quite similar. Adult responsibility is the world is powered by money. Unless you want to live in the Himalayas and in a cave somewhere, it's pretty hard to escape this economic, financial. I don't want to go into the philosophy of what money is, but we all know.
It's the grease for the wheel, it really does.
For 99% of them. Yeah. And I think the millennials, for some reason, seem to... I know there's a survey coming out showing that a lot of people think they're a lot more financially literate than they actually are. And there's a lot to learn. It's very complicated. Which is why I tried the Independence Day model is relatively simple. It may have sounded complicated, but if you can get ETFs and if you can get a discount broker to save your costs, and you get a financial planner who's got your best interests at heart, well, that's three big things.
Well, when it comes from someone like you, who has been the Financial Post's personal finance columnist for so many years, from 1993 to 2012, and also editor-in-chief for Money Sense magazine from 2012 to 2014, I take you very seriously. And the fact that you can simplify this means that you know what you're talking about. I mean, really, you have you've got the back end. You know what that looks like. And you know what it looks like if people don't take it seriously.
Well, yeah, I mean, at one level it's horrendously complex, the stock market and investments and credit with instruments. But on the other, it can be relatively simple, and it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be scary. For most of us, you could have 3 ETFs, basically 4 ETFs.
Right.
You have a Canadian equity, international equity, U.S. equity fund, and 40% in a bond fund or bond ETF.
Right.
Those 4 products alone is all you need. I mean, it doesn't have to be that. And then you just kind of automatically set it up so every time you do put in $500 a month or $1,000 a month into your TFSA and your RSP, it's allocated across those 4 ETFs year after year after year. The dividends are reinvested. It can be relatively simple. You don't have to get sucked in.
Okay, what if you're a student, a starving artist, or someone who's on a limited income, like a pension of any kind, whether it's ODSP or a senior's pension, or my goodness, even on welfare, whatever. People who don't have, how much money can people put in? Can they put in a tiny little bit just to get in the game? Like, is it there for everybody?
Yeah. There were.
I know that sounds maybe sound pathetic, but seriously, I mean, it's a reality.
You can use index mutual funds if you have a very little bit of money and you just want to put in $10 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is to start small and then grow from there. And
that's what I'm thinking.
Be encouraged by. I mean, even if it's $50 a month. I mean, at the end of the year, well, there's $500 you didn't have, and then that $500 grows and compounds, and then because you're encouraged to it, you become more frugal, do more guerrilla frugality, and say, you know what? I think we could actually do $1,000 a month instead of $500 a month, and you just kind of up
or
$1,000
a year instead of $500 a year.
And it becomes particularly if you're part of a couple, and it becomes this challenge that let's set up our Independence Day. It's like 7 years from now, we're going to have a mini retirement. We're going to go and spend 3 months in Costa Rica. And by that time, we're going to re-educate ourselves and get a new job that pays more. It's set a bunch of goals. But again, all the goals require frugal behavior in the present.
It does.
So you're not going to be like John Travolta's dad.
Oh my gosh, poor. Well, the thing is, that's the whole thing, and being creative with what you're doing as well. So then you say, hey, I can't follow that dream that I had when I was. When I was 10 years old or 6 years old, when people say, I want to be this, you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're so honest about what they want to be when they grow up, and I think that's the most important thing. I'm just going to go out with I'm just looking for it right now, a song by Chris Burkett. Which I think you'll really, really enjoy. It's actually
got one of Chris's albums, thanks to our
friend. Have you got the Be Creative album?
Yes, Be Creative. It's a very good album.
Darn it, I'm going to play Be Creative from Chris Burkett's album because I think that's the song we need to go out with. So thank you so much, John Chevreau, for joining us. Everybody, get Victory Lap Retirement and Findependence, and they can get it at
findependenceday.com.
Mm-hmm.
And all the rest you can get at Amazon and Chapters and the usual places.
All the usual suspects. So we'll play Be Creative by Chris Burkett, and you think about how you can be creative and have your own Independence Day. And we're out.
Used to laugh about. Be creative in the things that you always used to dream about. Be creative in the things that are happening around you. Taking a road with full attention means more than all convention. Whatever you do it with love. Put your heart and soul inside it. Be creative in the things that Be creative in the things that your teachers used to laugh about. Be creative in the things that you always used to dream about. Be creative in the things that are happening around you. Potential. Every little thing has, every little thing has, every little thing has so much potential.
CHHA